So now that we had a look at the basics of React and what React is about, let me explain what this course is about and what we're going to cover in this course. We're almost done getting started. Only a couple of more words I want to spend on how you get the most out of this course, and then we'll be leaving this module. Thereafter, you'll actually find an optional second module. In this optional module, I will walk you through the most important next generation JavaScript features we're going to use in this course. When writing React applications, you typically use quite a lot of these next-gen features, like arrow functions or classes. You do this because this allows you to write cleaner React code, and it's the de facto standard to use all these features. If you already feel comfortable using next-generation JavaScript features, so if you already know ES6 and so on, then you can skip the next module, and I will mention this there too. Otherwise, you got a nice module where I'll ensure that we're all on the same page and that you got solid fundamentals about all these features we're about to use. And you can always go back to that module if you later in the course encounter something that looks strange or new to you. After this optional module, the real second module is the module where we dive into the React basics. That's of course a super important module. You will learn how you can create React components, that there is more than one way of doing so, and how you can communicate between components, how a React application is generally built. This section also includes things like how can we output lists, or how can we render some content conditionally. Thereafter, it's time to dive into debugging, because we all make mistakes. You will write code that fails. That's natural, that happens to everyone. It's super important that you then know how to recover, how to debug your application, how to find that error that makes your program crash. We'll have a look at this in this debugging module. After debugging, we'll dive into styling. How can we style our React components, and how can we make sure that the styling we apply to a component only gets applied to that component and not to other components as well? We'll take a look at that in this module. Thereafter, we'll dive deeper into components. We'll already have learned a lot about them, but here we will learn which lifecycle they follow. We will learn how we can cleverly control whether React should check for updates of a component or not, and much more. So that is truly an important module, which will make sure that you understand the internals of React and that you got the tools you need for bigger or more advanced React applications. After that, you will have learned a lot about components, but we're far from being done. We'll then dive into HTTP requests. How can we connect our React application to the outside world? How can we fetch data from a server or send it to that server? How can we do all of that in a single page or also in a multi-page application with asynchronous HTTP requests, AJAX? That is what we'll have a look at in this module. And thereafter, we'll dive into routing. Routing is a core feature when building single-page applications. Because with routing, we can actually handle different URLs, like /user and /products, and render different pages, even though technically we only have one HTML page, and we simply parse the URL with JavaScript and re-render the parts of the DOM that need to be re-rendered to display a new page. That sounds very complex, and that is why we will use a package for this. Routing is a super important and key module of this course, therefore. Now, one important note at this point. All these concepts are always taught in theory and with tiny demo projects. We will also have an overarching course project, the Burger Builder, and we will regularly go back to that project and apply the features you learned in the previous module to the course project. So we will start by planning and creating it, then we will use advanced component concepts, we will apply styling, and we will also apply routing there, so that we can gradually see our project become better and better, and so that you always have a great way of seeing all these things, not just in theory or in tiny demo projects, but in a real project. So the things I mentioned here are only the overarching topics. This course actually has more modules because we have all these in-between practice-oriented modules. Back to the outline here though. After routing, we'll dive into forms and validation. In almost any web application you build, you need to fetch user input, and in this module I will show you how to do this in a dynamic way and how to also validate user input. And thereafter it's time for Redux, Redux and more Redux. We'll dive deeply into Redux, which is an independent third-party library, but which of course is used in many React projects. We'll start at the basics, we'll learn why we might want to use Redux, and then we will learn more advanced use cases like using asynchronous actions in Redux and way more. This is an important module and I can't wait to dive into this and then also apply it to the course project together with you. After Redux, we'll dive into authentication. Probably every web application has some sort of authentication, allowing users to sign up and sign in. Here, I will show you how to implement this. I will always, as in all these modules, focus on the client side, so on the React side, and not on the server side. But of course, I will explain how to implement authentication so that it works with any backend that supports this kind of authentication. We'll of course also apply this to the course project. After authentication, we'll dive into testing. Only an introduction, to be honest, because testing is enough content, or you can create enough content about testing to fill an entire course. But I want to introduce you to how you test React applications, which tools you use, and how to think about testing React apps. After testing, we'll of course also learn how to deploy a React application, so how to really ship it to a real server. And thereafter, I got loads of bonus content. For example, a whole module about animating React applications. Possible next steps where you could dive into after finishing this module. A module about Next.js, which is basically a library building up on React and making server-side rendered applications a breeze. A module where we will build our own workflow, our own project from scratch with Webpack and a couple of build tools. And way more. So a lot of content in this course. It has the length it has for a reason in the end. And I can't wait to dive into it together with you. So why don't we do that and just start with the course?